Thank you.
Is the motion seconded? I call the member for Warringah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I second the member for Curtin's motion and strongly agree around the call that that these two bills must go to inquiry and be properly examined. The hubris and hypocrisy from the government today in justifying their actions is breathtaking in bringing forward this legislation. And I call on every member of the government side and the opposition to think carefully about what you are doing if you put your name to this legislation. At a time of cost living pressures, these two major parties have cooked up a new deal on new political donation laws designed to keep them in power, and they want the public to pay for it. The hubris is staggering. We need to reform our broken system of political donations. No one disagrees with that. It is wrong that a billionaire can spend $132 million on trying to get his candidates elected, and that there is no limits on corporate donations, especially when companies actually have government contracts, and that it takes months for donations to political parties to be disclosed, and when they are, they're not broken down in a seat-by-seat way. But what we do want to see is scrutiny on a major piece of reform. This piece of legislation is substantial. It has taken a huge amount of time to bring it here, and the government is proposing to table it today, force a debate this week, and then have us vote on it by the end of the week. That is just the height of just insult to the Australian people, is the best way we can put it. No one wants Australia to drift towards a US system where political campaigns have become multi-billion-dollar exercises, forcing candidates into an unholy dance with big donors to raise the cash they need. But we also don't want to end up like the US with a malaise of only two choices, and two poor choices at that don't end up delivering good policy for the future. The bill introduced today, and the member for Perth has really given the dud job of the government to have to table this bill and put your name to it, I've got to say. It's said to have the coalition support, so it'll be interesting to see that every coalition member maybe exercise their free vote and think carefully of their integrity if they are genuinely going to support this bill. It is highly beneficial to major parties, and it smacks of a dirty deal designed to cement their duopoly. Independents and minor party representatives now make up 12% of the House, 27% of the Senate. Yet we have not been consulted on this legislation for months. I first saw a copy of this and was briefed 12:30 yesterday, less than 24 hours ago. Independents, this bill will have such a long consequence to our Australian democracy, and yet there is no scrutiny being allowed on this bill. We're being presented with this 215-page bill making significant reform to our electoral process with less than 24 hours, and now a proposal that the Labor and the Coalition intend to rush it through the House this week without proper inquiry, despite the fact that it's not intended to come into effect until 2028. So the question is, send it off for inquiry, get a report in the new year, unless the intention is that we're not going to come back in the new year. So maybe the government can come clean to the Australian people on that. There appears to be a flagrant double standard. I also understand, whilst the donation reform is going to be pushed through with no scrutiny this week, the truth in political advertising is intended to languish. The government has no intention to push that one for debate and to a vote, because it wouldn't want to be stopped from lying when it comes to its advertising. So not only are the Australian people being asked to pay more to political parties, they're actually going to have to pay for the privilege of being lied to as well, because there's a delay, constant delay, in introducing voter protections. The last time the two major parties got together to agree on an integrity measure was the National Anti-Corruption Commission. And look how well that turned out. A body that has not held a single public hearing, failed to deal with some of our biggest sector scandals like Robodebt, and has an adverse findings about its handling of internal conflicts of interest. Worse still, the government is proposing to reach into public coffers now when it comes to donations to top up the shortfalls the major parties will experience as a result of their new fundraising constraints. At a time when cost of living pressures are a daily worry for households, they are proposing to give themselves an extra boost of funding. Under the government's proposal, public funding per vote will rise from $3.50 to $5 at a cost that is north of $100 million. They can't find the money to top up payments for people on JobSeeker or to deal with the rental crisis, but apparently we can afford additional largesses to the political class. The hypocrisy is staggering. Asking taxpayers to pay more to fund the major parties while making it harder for new entrants to participate has the unmistakable feel of rigging the market. The bill proposes restrictions on the size of donations and the total amount that can be given by individuals, but it is the proposed spending caps which, in my view, are deliberately designed to put a foot on the scales in favour of our major parties. The government has made it sound like the problem is from the billionaires that fund candidates, but the real problem comes from within the parties, with 23% of the major parties' donation receipts to the Australian Electoral Commission shows as a non-declared source. There counts to around $290 million over the past 5 years going to the major party coffers with no public record of where it came from. Under this proposed bill, major parties will now be able to spend up to $90 million nationally, while a person, an independent that chooses to stand as an independent in a seat, will be restricted to spending $800,000 in a particular seat. And sure, the major party MP or candidate will also be subject to that candidate cap in a particular seat. But at the same time, the major party can run a parallel Senate ticket campaign and its political party advertising. And it's clear that that $90 million cap will not be spent evenly across candidates by the parties and can be put disproportionately in marginal seats to fend off a challenger. The major parties will run national television brand campaigns to reach into everyone's living rooms. They can run a centralised campaign office, databases, infrastructure. An independent taking on a major party candidate must set that up from scratch. And to add insult to injury, the proposal in this bill is that an incumbent party or MP will have access to a $30,000 a year admin cost, and it's a linear increase for the parties, but a challenger has nothing. So the challengers has the thanks for coming, you can bear the cost, but a major party MP gets the public purse to pay for it. It's such a gross imbalance, and it will be such a weakening of our democracy. It is not a strengthening, because the contest to enter into parliament will be less fair. Duopolies stifle competition, just like with Coles and Woolies. If the major parties make it too difficult for new players to enter, Australians will end up with fewer choices and poor policy outcomes. Independence brings smart solutions and positive impacts. That is the difference, and that is why the Australian public are turning away from major parties. They can see through this. They see through it. And whilst the government delivered this on a Friday afternoon, like putting out the trash, no different to the Morrison government when it comes to that tactic, the Australian people will absolutely see through this. And so what the big call will be in the 2025 election, we need to get as many independents into this parliament as possible, because this piece of legislation is stifling competition. It is there to make sure that political parties are just here for power, not for actual smart solutions and real legislation. We need to deal with lies in political advertising. The government has put forward its misinformation and disinformation bill, and that's been contentious and is concerning many. It's a necessary guardrail, but there are concerns. It would be the height of hypocrisy if then the government does not proceed with pushing for the Truth in Political Advertising bill to be debated and voted on with urgency. The public can have one standard, but political class has a different one. It is outrageous. So I very strongly support the motion for Curtin's motion that this bill should be sent to inquiry. Both bills should be treated equally. The Australian public deserves a robust democracy, the opportunity to participate fairly. We need a fair and equal playing field, and this bill is just trying to lock in a monopoly by the major parties.